two, one. Welcome to the POSITIVELEO show. It's where I'm always seeking ideas, people that are making impact in our society in hopes of sharing the stories with y'all. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Ellie, founder of Framing Femininity, to come on the show to discuss about her life, her inspirations behind Framing Femininity, and her visions for the future. Ellie, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. That intro was so formal. It makes me feel really official. I love it.
There you are. We're going to be official today. Let me put this guitar aside for a second. Ellie, thank you for coming to the show. And let's just get straight to it. Question number one I got for you. This is a good one. To get the audience acquainted, right? Could you tell us a little bit about Framing Femininity and the story and the motivation behind that, starting it?
Yeah. So I grew up watching a lot of YouTubers, and that was something I really enjoyed watching them. But then I also was like, oh, finding out they made money from it. It was something that always appealed to me because, of course, the world that we live in, we need money. And so I was always interested in wanting to start my own YouTube channel, but I never had a really good idea of what I wanted to do. Because, I would see like vloggers and people doing skits, and it's like, okay, I could try to emulate that, but that didn't feel authentic to me. And so I knew that if it wasn't authentic to me, if I was just trying to chase the money, then I knew I wouldn't be good at it. And that's not how you get, a following. But eventually, further down the line, I ended up going through like my own spiritual awakening of, feeling really lost for a while. I was dealing with like super severe depression, just really not happy to be alive, but also at the same time genuinely wanting to be happy to be alive. So then I had some experiences, and then eventually I watched this movie. The first movie I watched was Hereditary by Ari Aster. um, I think it's pretty well known. I will say, I think it's a great movie for what it is. It's graphic. It's definitely like a modern day tragedy. But underneath that, it's not like a horror movie that's just graphic for the sake of being graphic. Like there's a genuine reason for it. And so I was watching this movie, and of course, I felt a lot of feelings because it was so hard to watch, but there was also something deeper there that I was like picking up on a lot of the subliminal themes to it. And there were themes that really resonated with me. And then after watching that, some of my taste in YouTube channels changed. And then I started gravitating towards a lot of women who were really about empowering women in a way that isn't, basically about rediscovering our femininity and everything. Because it seems like for a lot of women that try to empower women, it's more about emulating men. And I've literally had a phase of, going that route, and it wasn't helping me. But then I was listening to these other women who were talking about the power of femininity and everything. And it was like everything they said about, okay, if you do this, this, and this, it's going to make you feel like this, this, and this. But a better way to do things is to do this. And so then the way that they were talking about, like, kind of what not to do, or basically like what they wouldn't recommend to do, was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I've been doing. It explains why I've been feeling this way. So, taking that advice, and then again, thinking about the movie, I was applying it to my own life, and then really beginning to like heal myself. And then the second movie I watched was Midsummer by the same director, Ari Aster. And it was a similar movie in terms of, it is another horror film. I don't think it's as graphic as Hereditary. So if you were going to watch one of the two, I definitely would recommend Midsummer. But it's also because for me personally, I love really psychedelic things. And there's a lot of really, really cool shots and coloring in that movie because it's really bright and colorful. So I was watching that. I love the artistic theme. But then by the end of it, it was literally like this epiphany of, just seeing like a whole underlying message. And I left the movie. I literally was telling everybody, like all the people close to me, like, yo, have you seen this movie? Okay, watch this movie with me because you need to see this movie. I just, everything that I was feeling, I was like, people need to hear about this. I need to share this. And then eventually I kind of thought about it like, okay, well, what if this is my YouTube channel? Can I do something with this? I think I could. So it took me, I came up with the idea for it last year around April. I think it might have even been like around my birthday, which is even funny because in Midsummer, the what's the word? It's not the climax, but like the plot plot isn't the right word. I can't think of the word for it, but the I guess I'll say the trigger that gets the events rolling was surrounded around the main character's birthday. So again, it was like becoming a very personal thing for me. And it was all related to like femininity. So I was taking that and my own personal story, getting inspiration from the women who had inspired me. And I was like, you know what? This feels right. This genuinely feels right for me. Um, and then I ended up coming across a tarot reader, totally random because I had never been into tarot readers at all. And I just did like a random pick a card. And then she mentioned something about, oh, you may be considering starting to work online. So it could be like, you know, Twitch, a YouTube channel. I heard that and my ears perked up. I was like, okay, you know what, let me go ahead and, you know what, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Because, you know, it's just one of those things of like, really, it just felt right. Like there is no other explanation other than that gut feeling. So that was in April. It literally took me a whole, like, okay, what is that, April to October when I finally uploaded part one, and then November when I uploaded part two. So it took me a good 6-7 months for me to actually get my thoughts out onto paper and then to edit the video and everything. But once I did, and I did upload it and I saw how everything came out, first time ever doing video editing, it was just such a magical thing. And I was so immensely proud of myself. And so then I tried not to really, one of the things I really had to focus on was not overwhelming myself, but then also keeping track of like all the other ideas I was getting. Cause it was like, once I channeled that creative energy, it was just creativity after creativity. So then I started working on the next one. And then from there, it kind of became easier for me to, just get my thoughts out and get them in a concise manner and really personalizing it for, as far as like telling my story. And I think doing that I know it has helped me build an audience because I'll be getting comments from other women of saying how they've related to the same thing. And some of the same things that I've went through, if it's not literally the same experiences, but also similar themes. And they're mentioning how, me talking about this and my insight is helping them. And then I'll also share the resources of other women who've helped me. So just this whole idea. Oh, and then another thing related to how I decided to get into movies. So when a huge part of my depression was, of course, my own repressed trauma, but also because the things that I was watching, it was like just continuous bombardment of negativity and dysfunction and toxicity, like reality television, which, everybody complains like, oh, this isn't positive, it's not empowering. Like, you guys don't turn in to watch that kind of stuff. It's negativity and drama is why everybody watches this. So I began to like pay more attention to the stuff that I was putting into myself. And one of the biggest things was the media. And then also with, related to my own spiritual awakening, I literally feel like I had my third eye open. I just began to look at certain things more critically. And I was actually paying attention to the media, and not in terms of like, oh, this is just something that's entertaining me actually trying to dissect, okay, what was the artist trying to say? What are the underlying themes here? All that. And I was beginning to pick up on certain things that were just like, whoa, okay, no. And then relating that to the women who were inspiring me, talking about, some of the societal cultural things that go on. I was seeing that in the movies, and that kind of translated into me wanting to share my own insight. And so basically, my whole channel is dedicated to, like, the biggest thing is dissecting media, um, and then relating that into life in general. And I really just want people to be mindful. Like, the whole thing is, I guess it's an underlying theme of mindfulness, you know, of like the law of attraction and everything. So it's really paying attention to what you're feeding yourself. And one of the biggest things is, of course, the media. Because I feel like a lot of people, they feel, they get these feelings after watching certain things, and they aren't always able to explain why. Um, and sure enough, on a lot of the movies I've done, I've had comments of people saying, like, yeah, this movie just never sat right with me. I considered watching it, but I never got around to it. And it's like, now I know. Um, so yeah, I think that's basically it, really just getting into a lot of the subliminal things and kind of like helping people um, build their awareness and critical thinking.
I love that, Ellie. I wanted to add just a quick follow-up question to that. I know you mentioned about depression. You know, there, for me, and what I'm doing my research on, the mental illness has been on the increase in our society and around the world. But through this personal journey that you're sharing with us through creating Framing Femininity, that helped cultivate a better space for you and actually help you with depression actually in the past. Now it's probably declining, right, in terms of depression and
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because the first thing I feel like is, yeah, my own personal experience, one of the biggest things, of course, was like the repressed trauma, but then it was also me just feeling so lost. And like there was like this nagging feeling of not being satisfied with my life at the moment, but also being like, okay, well, what can I do to change it? Like, I know there's greater out there. So what can I do? Like, what am I doing wrong? Um, and so that, like, just having that epiphany of getting these messages from the movies, the two movies that really inspired the channel, um, honestly, it was literally like it literally felt like a personal message to me of, you know, what I really needed to get over in order to progress. Um, so sure enough, like, as soon as I really got to the root of what caused my depression, because it wasn't just me not being satisfied with things. It was also, like I said, the repressed trauma. Because I think it's Carl Jung who came up with the idea of it. Um, he really, okay, hold on.
you're fine, you're fine. And I think Carl Jung is like a student of Sigmund Freud, I believe.
Was he a student of him? I don't know. Honestly, I came outside because I thought it was going to be more quiet. It's like everybody
Okay.
wants to go racing on the street. But
A Saturday, huh? Okay.
yeah, a Saturday. Um, but Carl Jung, I, I'm not entirely sure if he is the one who came up with it, but he's the one I've heard this from, of talking about your shadow. And you know, when you repress things, it doesn't go away. Like, it literally just kind of sits within you and then festers until you can't ignore it anymore. Um, and so I guess I'll get a little bit more personal. So like, one of the biggest things for me of that helped with the spiritual journey was getting into psychedelics. And so, you know, there's like this whole term of having a good trip and a bad trip. And it got to the point where I was literally trying to escape from life. So I was using psychedelics like regularly. Um, but it was like I wasn't having the same positive experiences. And there was always this nagging, just anxiety. And it was like the more I tried to fight the anxiety, the worse it got. And so I'd just be like, okay, well, you know what? Nah, maybe I'll just have another trip. I'll try this again. And then eventually got to the point where I, one day, I just felt a bad trip coming on and I was trying to fight it, but I was like, okay, I can't, this isn't going to go away. I need to talk to somebody. So I called up my sister And she literally started talking about our childhood. And oh my goodness, I'm trying to like not get emotional, but it was just a genuine, like, it was a real genuine moment. But she started talking to me about our childhood and like what I meant to her as a sister. And it was like, the minute she said it, it was just literally like, you know, like kind of like you'd been starving, and let's say you're like not starving, but like you're super dehydrated, and then there's this like wall of water, and there's like water dribbling down, and so then you try to climb up the wall, and then eventually you get to the wall, but then it's like, or like I'll say like the wall just broke through, and you're just awash with just water, and you just feel refreshed, and you're just sitting there like, oh my god, you're not even just drinking, but just having the water wash over you was like a refreshing, serene moment. And so when she talked to me about that, it was like a missing puzzle piece. Maybe, do I want to say missing? No, I'll say it was like a breadcrumb. It was like I suddenly turned down and I was like, oh, that breadcrumb. Oh, wait a minute, there's another one, and there's another one. And it just led this whole trail back into me beginning to understand like my building blocks and what kind of a person I was. And then once I got through that, then I began to understand like how that foundation led me onto the path of having some of these more undesirable experiences. And so then once I saw that, I was like, it was really just an aha moment of me undoing the learning and you know, figuring out, okay, what kind of person do I actually want to be? What kind of person am I meant to be? And I feel like who you're meant to be is exactly who you want to be. You just have to really figure out who you want to be, and then claim that and own that. So then, yeah, once I did that, that helped a lot. So then getting into the why of the depression, I then had to, why as far as the emotions, then I sat down and I looked at, okay, what have I been doing? And it was like, I would literally wake up, be mad that I woke up, go back to sleep, wake up again. It's like now at this point, like 5, 6, I don't feel like getting up, so I'm gonna go back to sleep. So I stopped, said like, okay, this is not making me feel good. What's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So I wanted a different result, so I started to do something different. So I started to get into yoga. So instead of going back to sleep, I would literally force myself out of bed. I wouldn't always make my bed. Sometimes, if that was the only thing I could do, then I would go ahead and do that. I would make sure I took a shower, and eventually just doing some yoga, even if it was just stretching. So I just started to incorporate all these small things of things that I could control, which I think is one of the easiest things you can do, is controlling your presentation. And so then once I got to get comfortable and confident in the way I was, you know, grooming myself and presenting myself, then it became easier for me to be confident in my own mind as far as like where my mind was going to lead me, and being confident in my own choices and in the path that I was choosing and what I was going to do, and so on and so forth.
Ellie, first and foremost, I want to thank you for sharing your story. It's pretty personal, and I want to share just a little bit on my side too. Adding to that is, you know, in my family, you know, my brother, unfortunately, 2 years ago, passed away due to mental illness, and it was very tough on my family. You know, talking about him gets me emotional too. You know, and I know he was really trying to figure out what way to resolve this problem that he was trying to resolve. I could tell when I look at him that he was really trying to figure it out for many years. And so like, I'm a huge supporter of finding ways to really address mental illness that has been permeating not only in our country, but all over the world. And statistics has shown that like, I think 70% of people living in cities, let's say, are taking some sort of antidepressants or sort of anxiety pill, and the list goes on. And so so number one, I just coming back is thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sure I'll share my story in the next run because it's a pretty long story and I don't want to.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how you found a way through this channel, through your personal journey, through the connection with your sister, through experimenting and trying different things to find that. Because I think a lot of people can relate to that, Ellie, because we're all trying to find out, including my brother who passed, ways to improve ourselves, not only physically, mentally, spiritually. And I think cultivating that, and that's why I started my channel, cultivating that instead of getting hooked on to entertainment, reality TV shows, all the negative stuff that we always think that it's good to know, but we get stuck to it. We watch it every single day. Oh, who's getting killed today? Who's getting hurt today? Who's, drama? What drama should I get attached to today on Netflix or whatever? So I'm jumping around here, but what you're doing in terms of inspiring folks to focus on the right things, focus on to where you need to focus on to get to where you want to be. Similar to the example you were talking about, climbing up that wall, hungry and thirsty and looking for water, and that wall crumbles over to reveal a, plush land and water. I was visualizing that as you were telling me.
Yeah.
I'm like, just kind of that refreshing and something that I wish my brother could have found. And there's a lot of what ifs, I wish I could return back time and go back and help him discover that. But at the end of the day, it's a very personal journey, when it comes to like battling depression or anxiety and bipolar and so forth. That I'm just sending my kind regards to everyone who's battling mental illness right now. That keep fighting, keep pushing through, keep experimenting, anything you can get your hands on to really try to find a way to battle this, whether through Western science, Eastern medicine, Western medicine, and so forth. Sorry, I had to have a little moment there. Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, no, it's good. Because even it's thinking about, the conversation we had earlier about, the power of your own mind. Because this is something that also really helped me get into manifesting and believing in the power, and then of course translating into confidence in myself. A lot of people, when they talk about certain alternative medicines, the experiments that they'll bring up is, as far as like a way to discredit it, is like, oh, it doesn't actually help, it's a placebo effect. But if you think about the placebo effect, literally what is that? That's you using the power of your mind to get the results that you want. And I think another thing that I really like, or another thing that I try to do is, I love the whole mystical woo-woo stuff, but I know that for a lot of people, it is something that is very alien and foreign because it's something that isn't really welcomed in society in a lot of ways. And I definitely feel like that has to do with general feelings towards femininity, but I think we'll get into that later. But so I'll try to ground it and explain it in a way that sort of rationalizes it, because that's something that's really personal for me, is understanding the why and trying to make sense of certain things. So when it comes to manifesting and like being the having the power to shape your own reality, I think a way that really helps get your mind wrapped around it is by understanding that you shaping your reality is you changing your perspective. So it's like you could have an experience, like let's say you went to the cash register and you went to like the I don't know, let's say like McDonald's. Well, I don't want to say McDonald's. Let's say you had a cash register, right? And, the cashier wasn't the most friendly. You could literally take that experience and internalize it and be like, oh, it must have been something personal for me. It could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been all these things, whys. And you're focusing on like all these negative explanations for why. And then you're internalizing that into yourself, when you could take a step back and just objectively, you have no idea what the reason is for. If they didn't explicitly tell you, you have no idea what that reasoning was for. So maybe if you can take all that energy and shape it into, put it into making yourself feel bad, then how can it not be possible for you to also take your energy and shape yourself into feeling good, into getting more positive experiences? So then, it then becomes oh, they were out to get me, into oh, I don't know why they did what they did, but I'm just not going to dwell on it. I'm going to move on. I wish them the best. You don't have to wish them the best, but it just helps you get over things and move on to the next thing. And really, not let's not explaining it. Accepting things, because I think that's another thing that definitely hurt for me with dealing with depression. But how I overcame it was just beginning to accept things for the way that they are. And if there isn't an explanation that can benefit me, then I began to just kind of drift away from it. Like, okay, this isn't productive, so let me just turn my attention to something else. And then that just got better things that I actually wanted, that were fulfilling, stimulating, just all that.
I'm with you there. And if I could add, I know prior to the call, we talked about emotions, right? We talked about those feelings and how powerful those feelings are once we take that and attach it to the positive side instead of the negative side. Because so many times in our lives and my friends and family, everybody, we tie some of these emotions, into something negative. And once that happens over a period of time, becomes a habit. And to get out of that habit takes as much amount of effort, if not more, to get it onto the right side of things and latching love and gratitude and those feel good emotions onto the good things. And the feeling of love, the feeling of gratitude, all these are higher frequencies, as you know, and all the other feelings of worries, concerns, and fears are low frequencies. And sorry, I'm going to add another thing that this is going to sound interesting. So, when we are, how do I say, going to do a presentation, right? Most people are fearful, nervous, and what typically happens, we have to go use the restroom, or because the kidney associates with the feeling of nervousness, according to certain studies, and fear and all that kind of stuff at a very low frequency of the body. The higher frequency of love hits the heart and then all the way up to the third eye. Gratitude and all those feelings are higher, elevating. So, I mean, I have to do more into those studies, but you can kind of see, what I'm saying, in terms of emotions, low frequencies and high frequencies. But I just wanted to add the point of emotions, and I wish that people can detach away from all the negative stuff and attach emotions onto the positive stuff, so they can truly manifest and attract and create and cultivate what truly they need. Because a lot of times, Ellie, people say they want something, and they do 10% of the effort and the thought process and all that kind of stuff, the spiritual connection, and they expect to get the 90%. Doing the same thing. I remember we were talking about the definition of insanity. A lot of people are doing that more often than than we think. And to how do we get away from that? What was one tool that you used that you could detach from the negative habits and then reconnect onto the good habits to get you to where you are now?
The biggest thing has definitely, like I said, focusing on things I can control. So getting into taking care of myself. So not just mind, but physically taking care of myself. So I got into yoga. And it's funny, like meant talking about doing minimal effort, expecting greater results. There was a point in time I didn't recognize it during the time, but me looking back, I was like, oh snap, I literally developed an eating disorder. Because I wanted a certain physique, but I just, for whatever reason, was like, oh, exercise. No, I don't need to do that. I'll just not eat. And there were some other reasons too. But basically, I was literally starving myself, but I wasn't, well, it wasn't like completely starving, but I definitely was not getting a properly balanced, healthy meal of, all the vitamins and everything. So one of the first things I began to do was just cut out um, emotional eating. And every now and then I'll still kind of be like, you know what, I have a craving. I want to get a chocolate bar. So sometimes I'll do it, but I'm at the point now where I don't do it regularly. And it's like, I feel like I've trained myself to, when I do give into those cravings sometimes, I'll literally be satisfied and like, I'll either be satisfied and like, okay, yeah, I don't need this for like a while, or it'll be like, dang, I kind of wish I didn't do that. So I'm just not going to do that again. Um, so it was like managing my eating, which also got me into rediscovering a hobby of learn of food. Food in general is a hobby. I love watching it get prepared, learning about it, and eating it, but then also preparing it. And that itself, you know, if you think about cooking, like a mystical way of thinking about it is like that's literally a spell that you're doing. Because you know, you have the ingredients, you have the measurements, and you get this amazing concoction. And especially with certain meals you can make that are like specifically for, oh, make a tea for boosting your immune system, etc. You know, so that, especially like, it's kind of like romanticizing my life a little bit, I guess. It got me, it helped make my inner child happy. Um,
I think
so
that's what
definitely,
we're missing, by the way. I think that's what
huh?
people are missing. I think that's what we're
Yeah,
missing in
yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
society. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one of the biggest things is just learning how to be a kid again. Um, but the most, probably the most important thing has been yoga. Because you know, relating it back to doing the minimal effort and expecting maximum results, I began to see people doing the coolest yoga moves of like, you know, a handstand, one handstand, a literal just balancing on their head, balancing on one foot, crazy flexibility, all this stuff. And I was like, dude, that's so cool. I want to do that. And one of the great things, Instagram, okay, so social media, y'all got to clean up your algorithms. Like there's literally a button, do not show, do not recommend account, I don't want to see this topic. You got to clear it out, and then you got to start liking the things that you actually want. That's another, you know, magical little ritual you can do related to the law of attraction. So I started liking the yoga things, and then I started getting more, oh, is this the pose you want to do? Well, hey, do this. And you know, it shows like the extra steps of how to actually practice, or not just practice, but get to the next level. And so one of the things I love about yoga is how it really, you, it's such a customizable thing, because there's so many different poses. There were literally stretches I was doing that I didn't even realize were yoga. And then when I began to do more research, I found out like, oh, there's an actual name for this. Um, and so I just started from where I was at, whatever level you're at, you can start there. But then the whole process, it really helps you appreciate your body, because as long as you also got to like train your mind into believing that you can do it. Because one of the things I love is seeing people's progress. They'll literally show like, oh, at this point I was here, and then like a year later they'll show a deeper thing. And I like that they'll have that longer time frame, because you know, when people talk about like, a lot of people tend to look at certain things and they I think it's just it might be like an instant gratification desire that we all kind of have, of just expecting it to be like, oh, they got it like that. But there's actually a lot of behind the scenes of perseverance and practicing. And you know, the saying goes, it gets easier when you do it every day, but you got to do it every day, or at least consistently,
And
right?
I'm with you right there. And just attaching a side question to that. Why do, Ellie, what do you think people want shortcuts all the time? They like, they don't want to go through the whole A to Z. They want to get the shortcut to get to the Z. And I feel like we're in a society that's always trying to find shortcuts, when all you have to do is put in the work, put in the effort, connect your body, mind, spirit together to make that happen. The results are typically pretty favorable, but people are just skipping to shortcuts. And do you think that's because of, the whole modern society and internet, and trying to, or is it, you think is there a way to improve that, or what's your thought on that?
I do think that there is a certain aspect of society that is very much grooming that instant gratification need, with, let's say, like with consumerism. I don't want to necessarily say materialism, because I feel like I have a sort of unpopular opinion a materialism, where I don't think it's an inherently bad thing, but with consumerism of just, oh, I want a lot of stuff. And, you know, a big thing on YouTube, especially, is like people having these massive hauls of just having a ton of stuff, and it's like all cheap, you know? It's not like it's a really quality thing. And one of the things that helped me get away from that is, you know, like the whole fast fashion. Um, you it's like you think you need things, but you know what? Okay, the whole core of it, getting down to the nitty gritty, I feel like it's a huge insecurity of just not believing in yourself, you know? Because if you really are confident in your own self, you're not going to look at see other people and be like, oh, I want what they have like tomorrow. You're going to look at that as inspiration and be like, okay, that's an ideal that I can work for, that's something that I can do, so let me go ahead and work towards it. And then it's like, you're, no matter what, you're not going to be concerned with the time frame because you're so busy focusing on how you feel and what you want. So then you're going to keep going with that, and you know, really just begin to enjoy the journey, and then also give yourself, be proud of like all the progress you're making. So I feel like if people really became more confident in themselves, and also with a lot of the media, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors where we are led to believe that certain things happen overnight. Of course, there's like some people that are very, some actors that, you know, they talk about how they literally got rejected over and over and over again. They literally just had like a dollar and a dream, and it took them ages, and then they finally hit it big. And sure enough, that's something that I really like seeing with me analyzing media. I'll recognize some of these lower actors, and I'll be surprised, like, oh wow, they were literally just an extra that was on screen for like 30 seconds, and now they're a multimillionaire, you know, an actual A-lister. One that people really love to quote is like Robert Downey Jr. You know, he was able to completely turn his life around, and I think he's like literally one of the highest paid actors now. Um, but you know, going into the smoke and mirror side of things, one of the channels I love is Lori Hill, because she talks about celebrity plastic surgery and, you know, really breaking down the smoke and mirrors of it all. And then seeing that, you begin to realize like these people are human too. And a lot of them literally weren't lucky. Like they had to pay a lot with like blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that that's a side that we just are not shown. There's reasons for that, but you know, the whole outcome of that is that it really just doesn't make you feel good. And so you get really anxious and insecure, and you are chasing this impossible ideal and then feeling bad that you can't achieve it and that you're not achieving it, as opposed to looking at it from a more realistic perspective of, okay, well, what, as far as like understanding the true process, you know, so that you can actually apply that to your own self and like manifest what you actually want.
100% agree with that. And I try to compare that to an example where like when you go to the gym and you're working out, or you're working out at home, either way, nowadays, right? COVID situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like you're doing bench press or whatever it is, you're breaking down your muscle. And I think according to science, that the muscle will break down, but then it will grow again.
Yeah.
But then I think a lot of people want to skip that, you know, that process, that whole growth and rest process, and want to be a bodybuilder at the end of the day, right away. You know what I mean? Or just being big, but it takes a lot of time to get to that level, and dedication and sweat. I remember going to a gym and seeing this person working out, and then he's taking a break and just eating lots and lots of food and going back to working out again.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't see that, you know, the blood, sweat, tears, right? They just see the end result and be like, I want to get there as quickly and as fast as possible. I'm gonna take a pill. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? They always want a shortcut, but maybe the shortcut is not a shortcut at all. It's maybe the shortcut is really putting the work in.
Yeah.
And really take and enjoying those little victories. Yeah, I'm sure when you were able to do one of the yoga poses that you were like all that, you were like, yeah, I did it. And then you're like, you got, you know, addicted to it. You want to do the next pose and the next pose, right? It was sort of like a natural journey, progression. towards
Yeah,
achieving
yeah.
the yoga
And I
standard
was
you want to be.
exactly. I was literally I would do yoga with some of my friends and family and they would get kind of discouraged. And my sister actually confessed to me, like she was like, you make me feel ugly because you're over there being all flexible and graceful. And I was just like, dude, it was funny too because when we were younger, she was actually the flexible one. And I used to be so jealous. But I had to kind of, just sit her down and be like, look, this did not come overnight. This is literally something I've worked towards. And I think another thing too is that a lot of people are really afraid to fail, because I think with certain the way that some things are framed, a lot of people don't. I guess that's again related to like not um, revealing the whole behind the scenes stuff, right? You don't hear about the failures, and people think that failure is just a bad thing. But there's a quote from Thomas Edison, where I think somebody, what is it? It's something along the lines of like, oh, I didn't fail to make the light bulb 99 times. I just learned 99 ways to not make a light bulb.
There
So
you
that's again
go.
related to
Love it.
like, changing your perspective. And I say this now because this is literally a motto for me. Failure and experience are literally the best teachers. Because this is another thing that is in, like the level up circles that I'm in, of learning to trust your own power and being confident in yourself, because there'll be a lot of women that'll ask certain questions and trying to personalize it and get advice, which isn't always a bad thing, but it gets to a certain point of like, you can tell that they are not confident in just doing it themselves and they're afraid of making mistakes. And definitely there's certain things of like wanting to be safe and that kind of stuff, but there's some stuff that you just have to learn for yourself. And you can I say I feel now that you should always take people's advice with a grain of salt and use it more as a guide for your life, because at the end of the day you're the one who's going to have to live with your experiences. You're the one who is living your own life, and you also have your own path. That's like it's a really beautiful thing. Like, you're the main character of your own story. um so you really just gotta get out there and just try things, and then be okay if it doesn't go the way you wanted. But most importantly, learn from what went wrong. Look back and be like, okay, what could I have done differently? What would I have done differently, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually, as you get used to doing the right thing, it'll become easier to do the right thing.
100%. And I wish that we could cultivate a lot of that back into the educational system,
Mhm.
Ellie, where we can teach, the future generations of our country and the world, how to understand and accept failure, how to work and learn from that. That there are not 99 ways to fail. Well, learning 99 ways to fail and continue to learn how to improve to create that light bulb. Had
Mhm.
had Thomas Edison stopped at, or Nietzsche, or stopped at 99 or 98 or whatever before the light bulb, we would never have the light bulb.
Right.
And I the job that I have right now, I had to apply. I was applying to almost 300 job applications before I got my job, and had I stopped at 299, that would I would never got the job. So
Right.
it was just, so to your point, but I wish we could cultivate that more, Ellie, into our schools, so that the kids coming out, they have ways to understand life and not look for shortcuts, and understand it's okay to fail, it's okay to fall, it's how you get back up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Make the next
Yeah.
step and the next step. Ellie, I have a question for you. Sorry, I'm jumping back to this list of questions that I have for you.
Yeah.
And looking around, and I'm sure we're going to revisit, because this is a great convo that's going. It's flowing. I'm loving it. Uh, Question number two comes back to the word feminism, femininity. Do you think that we, as a country, even as a world as a whole, are we heading, you think, in the right direction? And if not, what improvements can we continue to invest to really establish soundly that equity lens, and then improve that into every facet of our society? Like, how do we move forward as a world, or as a country, as a community? What are your thoughts on that?
So I feel like I'm a big believer, generally speaking, because I know there's a little bit of a gray area and some nuance to it, but generally speaking, I do feel like everything happens for a reason, and whatever's meant to be will be. Um, so I would say that in general, I do think that society is headed in the right direction just because this is the path. And I've seen there's been a lot of things with me learning, looking back in history, and I guess I could just kind of see, the trickle down effect of like how it led to where we are today. So like for me, I look back on some of my experiences, dating wise and whatnot, that, would I ever go through it again? No. But am I glad that I had that experience? Absolutely, because it taught me something. I learned from it. But I think it ultimately comes down to everyone on the individual level. So collectively, yeah, I think we're all headed in the right direction just because this is the way the world is going to go. And you know, it's just the way the world is going to go. But as far as, whether you are going to have a good life, that ultimately is down to the individual. And that goes back to changing your perspective and the law of attraction and being mindful of what you pay attention to. So, of course, if you look around, like it could, me from like, how long ago was that? Just 2 years ago. Um, 2 years ago, I would have answered this probably with a resounding, oh no, the world is awful. Like we're headed down into a deep, dark, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But me now, through changing my perspective and just wanting better to come, I am literally surrounding myself with women that are genuinely inspiring and empowering for me. So I see the way their life is going, and then I can begin to see the changes that my life is going through. And it's like, yeah, no, the world is going to be fine simply because I believe it is. And, I think one of the things that we really need to, as a society, that could change is to really focus on the things that we can control. And one of the things, and release what we can't control. And one of those is the biggest one of just trying to eliminate negativity and some of these darker things. Because, thinking about yin and yang, life is about duality. We've got men and we've got women, we've got, cats and dogs, we've got sunshine and rain, heat and snow, all these balancing polar opposites. So that the bad stuff is always going to be there. I think the important thing is to simply just be aware of it and learn how to navigate around it to completely avoid it if you can. um, Best case scenario, worst case scenario, navigate through it so you know that you don't dwell on it. Um, so for me, relating it to like back to our emotions, I'm still battling depression. It's not as bad as it used to be though, because I've gotten into the mindset of learning to control my mind of like, okay, sure, I might wake up one day and I might just be sad. I don't know why I am, but I just feel sad. And so I can I won't beat myself up for feeling sad. I'll literally just be like, okay, why? I can't figure out why. So I'm just going to go back to sleep for now. But then I'll tell myself, like, when I wake up, though, I'm going to do something else. And it doesn't have to be big, but it could literally just be, like I said, getting up and making your bed, just touching your toes real quick, stretching, like washing your face. And something that's really important is when you tell yourself you're going to do something, you have to follow through. I think it might have been a meme I saw this on, or it might have been a friend who told it to me. But it was literally, again, another epiphany moment, because it's like when you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you are literally violating your own trust to yourself. You're betraying yourself. And that is like one of the absolute worst things you can do. Because if you can't rely on yourself, what are you left with? Um, so, I think if the most important thing is to really just focus on yourself and what you can change. Because another thing that contributed to my depression was me seeing all these awful things and just wanting to do something and being like, oh, there's, all these kids starving over there. Well, I got to become a billionaire so I can just give them all my money, like all these kind of far-fetched, very big, grand, just, kind of wild ideas, but also me not focusing, like trying to come up with an actual plan, something tangible that could actually get results. So then once I did start working on a smaller scale, I say now, looking back, like I had to learn to heal myself so I could teach other people how to heal themselves. And so once you really focus on that, you have your own experience, and that experience, your voice and everything, which is one of the reasons why I do love YouTube. Like that voice is literally precious, and you never know who you're going to reach with that. So I think the lesson really is to be the change you want to see. And it's not always about trying to control other people's lives and, oh no, I want to change the world, so I got to teach everybody, this is the proper way of like doing things, and as far as like a strict set of rules, but instead, if you focus on being the best version of yourself, that itself is, you're setting the example for other people, and that is something that they literally get inspiration from, because for me too, like I there would be people who would tell me certain things, and it might be the right advice, but I literally wouldn't listen to them because I could see that they weren't applying their own advice. So once you focus on yourself with things that you can control, I think that the what the saying of like, big waves start as small ripples and then they collectively get bigger and bigger, right? So if everybody starts doing their own thing, minding their own business a little bit, then eventually, that positive, that love that we're all feeding into ourselves, it's going to come together and create a bigger, more beautiful thing. And that's why I do feel, that's another reason why I feel like the world is going to be okay. It's going to be okay because I can see these smaller ripples forming. I'm literally a part of it. So, I'm not worried about anything.
When you said that the world is going to be okay, I just sort of like, yo, give you a hug, send beautiful energy around the world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what we got to do. And then I like how you were saying how we can do it on our own scale. That it doesn't have to be this grand, like I have to be president of the United States or the world to make a change. We can start affecting our neighbors now as we choose to. And jumping to the point of waking up, in bed and feeling these negative emotions, which I am too. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. And then waking up again and telling ourselves, hey, we're going to do something different about that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Today, because remember, prior to this conversation, we were talking about, and I think Dr. Joe Dispenza talked about this a while ago, about how at a certain age, you start to enter a program, right? And the program is a program that we set up. We wake up at a certain side of bed, we drink the certain amount of coffee, we do the same things every single day. And the moment we want to change, right? The moment we want to change, there's a lot of uncomfortableness, right?
Mm-hmm.
8 o'clock, we typically stress about traffic. Now we're saying we don't want to stress about traffic. Now we want to be, but that uncomfortableness, I think people need to get used to, Ellie, because that uncomfortableness of change, that growth is actually a good thing to open up that comfort box. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, though, when they get uncomfortable, like, oh no, I'm about to change, and they get uncomfortable because they're so used to getting worried or pissed off during traffic. Let's go back to that, what I'm used to, right? Which is being
Mm-hmm.
a certain way, or negative emotions, or all that kind of stuff. They're afraid of that change. But just adding to your point, it's just being uncomfortable. It's also a way of thinking that change is coming. It's coming, and that we need to kind of embrace that change, embrace that uncomfortable feeling, because that's only where growth can actually happen. But it feels interesting because when we're uncomfortable, Ellie, we feel like we're not in control. And so when people think they're not in control because they're uncomfortable, that they should revert back. But I'm
Right.
telling folks, hey, don't worry about the uncomfortableness. Actually, it's basically being uncomfortable. It's like an empty canvas. Now you can start to draw what to expect. Like the definition of anxiety is worrying about something in the future, right? Something that in expectations. But if you start taking a step now and start drawing slowly, you're basically creating the future every second. Every second into our conversation right now is the future. Whatever happens down there, we already expected the worst. We already have that scenario in our head, right? Because of the sympathetic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So now, couldn't we just create second, an hour, a day as we head towards that event, the future that we're looking for, in hopes that it'll change that future? There's no guarantee. On one end, we know how bad that event's gonna happen. We predicted the worst. On the other end, we can actually make a change towards it. But
Mhm.
I find that some people, Ellie, actually a lot of us, including myself, sometimes we know something bad's going to happen, and then we wait until it happens, and then we expect a different result.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it never happens. It never. So anyways, I just want to add that point. And jumping on to the third question I want to lay out is, as we're connecting with the community, as you're doing that in your community as well, how do you envision framing femininity, in the next couple of years, as well as the message that you want listeners to take away from this conversation?
Well, you know what? I honestly, I definitely feel like it's going to get to a certain point for me where the things that I am saying are going to become a bit redundant. Um, and I used to feel a little anxious of like about that eventual, which I feel like it'll be an eventual ending. Um, and worrying like, okay, well, I'm eventually gonna run out of things, but again, honing it back to, okay, no, live in the present moment. That is going to be a long time coming because I literally have so many ideas and I'm getting so many insights and like themes and messages and morals from all this stuff that I'm looking at right now. And I literally get inspiration like pretty much every single day. Um, so I'm not as worried about that future, but I at the same time, going back to focusing on yourself at the individual level, another thing that was leading to my depression was having like a hero complex and wanting to save people, but that itself is a very egocentric thing because we all have our own paths in life. Like, as the saying goes, right? You give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach him to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. So I had to do that deprogramming myself of you know being okay with letting people live their lives the way they want to see, the way they want it to be, even if with whatever I say, my own morals that I've applied to my own life, and I can literally see people making the same mistakes I made, and I can literally talk to some of them and I know exactly, maybe not all of it, but I can pinpoint certain negative patterns and I know the source of it when they tell me this thing. That might just be like a personal thing for me because I'm very like analytical like that. But I'll be able to see this. But at the same time, I used to get frustrated so like I used to have a roommate and she would complain about her boyfriend, or I would pick up on certain behaviors that reminded me when I dated an ex of mine, and I would try to talk to her like, listen, this isn't a good guy for you, yada yada yada. She was just not ready to hear it though. And so I used to get frustrated like, oh my gosh, why isn't she listening? And it's like, because she doesn't want to. And if I focus my energy on trying to control her when I can't control her, that's taking away energy from what I have to focus on and what else I want to do. So I really am just, I want, my ultimate goal is um getting people confident in themselves. So as much as I love having getting followers and people who want to be a part of my community, I'm very much okay with and even encourage them getting to the point where they don't feel the need to come to my channel, and hear my perspective on everything, because they're at the point now where they can see it for themselves. And I feel like that's, talking about like this concept of light workers, I feel like that's literally what you're meant to be. Yeah, that's literally what you're meant to be as a guide. Like, we're literally sort of like surrogate parents for people. And, we're teaching people how to raise their inner child. But eventually that inner child is, going to become a blossoming adult. Um, and so, basically, like, yeah, I just really want my own focus, and even with people, what I want them to take away from this conversation, I guess, is to really um, understand that you're not alone. Like, there's so many of us, so many people that you get inspiration from, and me, I'm not at my final destination, but the fact that I do get people that say they're inspired by me is itself an affirmation for me to continue going on that path. So, people listening right now, just really, really, whatever stage you're at, understand that you are exactly where you're meant to be, but that doesn't have to be where you finish, you know? So really just be confident in yourself and understand that you're a human. We are, well, I believe, you know, we're spiritual beings living a human experience. So the whole point of being alive right now is for us to learn how to enjoy life. Like, we were not, so many of us were not put here on this earth to, well, in general, I don't think that we are meant to be put on this earth to suffer. Um, there's, you know, the concept of like heaven and hell and karma and all that, but ultimately, the thing about heaven and hell though is like it ultimately comes down to your own personal choices. So if you want to start being a better person, if you want to do good, do it. You literally have the power to create your own reality, and no matter what you believe, you're right, because it is your perspective. You are the one who's going to have to live with all of your choices. So, you know, really just think about what you do actually want and let go of what you don't want, um, so that you can actually start to enjoy life and enjoy being a human.
Hear people clap or hear my clap. Yo, Ellie,
Thank you. Thank you.
you dropped some mics there. I wish I had Zoom had these, like, you know, mic drops things.
Yeah.
And I want to add to that last point too. It's like letting go. You know, like when you let go of those negativities, suddenly there's these, I don't know, your shoulders start to get light. You start
Yeah.
to feel this motivation towards something you truly want. So we got to do more of that, because if we follow our feelings, we'll know this makes you feel bad. Stay away from that. This makes you feel amazing and uplifted. Do more of that. And we
Exactly.
break it down to the basics of that. So, wow. Okay. Question number 4, Ellie. The purpose of the show, right? The Positive Leo show, where I'm always curious about how people cultivate the word positivity, while being realistic about it, of course, as well, and how to create that kind of mindset and be inspired to create, because everything's a personal journey, as we know, to really cultivate the person that we meant to be. And so during, you know, that path that we're trying to get on, the opposing force is the global pandemic, poverty, inequality, in many facets of our society. How does one, understanding the message that you just provided to us, take that first step to cultivate positivity, that mind frame, that mindset, and go for the better? What do you think?
Yeah. So it all goes back to focusing on things you can control. So for me, I literally do not watch the news anymore. My mom will listen to it, and it honestly explains a lot. But I can just see how, you know, the news is not really about properly and ethically informing you, you know? Like, it's very much is a ratings thing of constant negativity, because that's just, it's like a train wreck. It's literally just a train wreck. Or, you know, you think about traffic, how so many people, they say they want to get there, everybody says they hate traffic, but sure enough, everybody ends up contributing to the traffic because they always have to stop and stare at some awful thing that happened on the side of the road, you know? um, so, and then again, it goes back to accepting things, accepting things that just are and letting them be. You know, the whole duality of life, there's always going to be negativity. People die every day, you know? So focusing on this person, that person, someone somewhere that you have no idea who they are, their death literally does not have to affect you unless you want it to, because you don't know who they are. And if you focus on that, then of course you're going to continue to be miserable. But then when you take a step back and you really think back of, it's just, it's kind of a quote unquote conspiracy thing, but I don't believe it's a conspiracy, because I just, you know, connecting the breadcrumbs, of like feeling miserable about things, and then thinking about how, you know, that relates to consumerism and how you look up to the ideal of celebrities, and, you know, you just feel so inadequate and so unhappy and so miserable about so many things, and it's all literally just a distraction that takes your eyes and energy into feeding them. So, you giving your energy to them is lining all their pockets, but then you don't focus on yourself and what you can do and how you can manifest your own abundance and happiness and ideal life, and really, realizing your dreams, let alone manifesting it, but actually realizing them. So I guess I'll say the first thing, that is useful, the most useful and most feasible, is think about some of the things you like to do when you were a kid, because it all comes down to, healing and loving and embracing your inner child, um, which also kind of relates back to shadow work. But that, I guess I'll say, that's a little bit of a tougher thing, since so many of us go through different levels of trauma, and that can be very hard to do. um, so just start off with, like, okay, what did I like to do as a child? You know what, I kind of like to color. Even if maybe you didn't like to color, but I do think doing some of these childish things helps helps manifest that positivity, because it's a nostalgia thing. So it takes you back to a simpler time, where you aren't worrying about things, and you aren't necessarily like trying to come up with some big project. It could be something as simple as, like, you know what, I feel like drawing a picture of a pink unicorn with a rainbow. So then you just do it, and you work on it till you get it the way you want it. But regardless, like, that whole process of doing it is itself like helping channel your own manifesting, because it's literally your whole doing art, I guess I'll say, is one of the best things, because that itself is a manifesting process. You have this unrealized potential, this idea that you want, and so then you have to then apply the practical application and actually do it, and then you get the end result. And then that little bit of endorphins, even if it's not exactly the way you wanted it to be, you can still look at it. And this is where you have to, like, kind of be easy on yourself. And there's like a saying with artists where there's like this curve where our tastes don't match up with our skill level, but you got to understand that you have to work to get that. So taking that first step is still a step in the right direction. And so, yeah, just be simple things, or even, thinking about, like, what a comfort food. You could literally make it yourself. There's the internet. If you're watching this now, you got access to the internet, so it's no excuse. Like, there's all sorts of helpful how-tos and everything. Um, so just doing that to make it yourself, and like I said, relating it back to magic, that itself is spell work and manifesting for yourself. But if you don't feel comfortable cooking, find a nice little restaurant, even just go to the grocery store and get something. um, there's some leeway with that, of course, because it's, you got to pay attention to what you're putting into yourself. But even still, that having a want and then doing it, um, is just a good first step, as far as, like, getting the, what is that, like, the serotonin, the dopamine, into feeling good. But then, of course, this is, I'm like starting to try to micromanage of, like, oh well, eat your vegetables, yada yada, but it's baseline. Think about something you like to do, and then just do it.
I'm with you 100% when you talk about like connecting to your childhood and coming back. I call myself the baby man. That's one of the reasons why I shave my head. To cultivate into that zone. And it's amazing how, like, in our society, Ellie, like, people, think that as adults, the agreed societal way is to stress, worry about your mortgage, worry about your car, paying the rent, paying the loans. We got to worry to survive, or something like that.
Right.
When I think, and I'm 100% with you, because all that worrying leads to just that low frequency, that negative, bad feeling. If you connect with your inner child during the simpler times, to get connected to that higher level frequency, because when you're at that higher frequency of love and gratitude and just feeling that emotion, you can do so much more. You can see so much more opportunities and be able to capitalize on them. But it's just interesting. Why do adults think that stress is normal? That it's normal to stress? It's like it's like a code no one talks about. Stress is bad, but everyone agrees to talk about it. You know what I mean? That it's okay.
Yeah,
It's so weird. And so amidst that, you're telling folks to really go back to a time when we know how it feels to be happy, how it feels to be loved. Couldn't we cultivate that? Couldn't we look inside and go back instead of thinking everything is outside? We need that house, we need that car, we need everything outside
yeah,
to make us feel something that's already inside of us, that we know it's already there. We felt it, we experienced it back when we were 10, 15, or whenever. So bring that back out, right? In a
exactly.
sense.
And that's something too that leads to the anxiety of thinking that you need to change your outside to change your inside. But if you do that, then that itself is an attitude of lack because you're focusing on, oh no, I need to get all these things and then I'll be happy. But then if you focus on being happy, like happiness is subjective, it's a frame of mind and it's a choice. When you are happy and confident in yourself and believing in all the possibilities, that is literally what's going to motivate you forward, of course. But then it's also going to be what helps you even see the opportunities. Because you think about inventors and some of these artists, they literally just had a vision and something that they themselves believed in, but it was also just a creative way of looking at things, you know? Um, so when they focused on that creativity, they imagine if they were so busy focusing on how miserable they were, like they never would have came up with the next best thing, you know? They're very solution oriented, whether that's actually wanting to come up with like a practical invention that makes our lives easier, or it's something about, you know, wanting to create an artistic piece of like, you know what, there's this feeling, it's an ineffable feeling, but I kind of want to translate that into art. um and yeah, it just goes back to your perspective and the way you look at the world.
100%. As a little kid, when I fall down, I get right back up and go forward.
Right,
As an
right,
adult, we fall down, we analyze every single step of why we fell down and then analyze how in the world we're going to get back up. And all that analyzing is just wasting crucial time. Because as a child, they just get up and go again because they got that
right.
vision. They know what they want. They know they're trying to just have fun and feeling that. So I feel you. I feel you on that. Last question is, how should people reach out to you? Where can people find you? Through your social media? Feel free to share.
Yeah. So you, of course, the easiest way probably to reach me is on my actual YouTube channel. So at Framing Femininity, I'm always checking the comments every day. So, you know, you can reach out to me there, suggestions for stuff you want me to look at. I'm not going to promise a timeline because, you know, it's a process for me doing it, but I'll still read it and respond to your comments and everything. Or you can send me an email, framingfemininity@gmail. Um, and I'm also on Instagram. I have some art there, and then I'll also give up updates for the YouTube channel on there, and I have some synchronicities. Um, but yeah, those are the main ones. Well, the only ones.
And I'll make sure to put some of that in the description so folks can kind of make it easier to click on the button and get connected with you. And I also really want to take this time, Ellie, to really thank you for coming on to the Positively Show, sharing your thoughts, your stories. I know we got some personal too on both ends. And I think your perspective, folks can really take back and hopefully can cultivate some of the lessons learned and then apply that to their life in one fashion or another. So, Ellie, thank you for coming on, sharing your inspiration. And I'm wishing you the best. And I know we're going to probably have a conversation again in the future, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really, I always love talking about my experiences and then hearing from other people. And it was great. I loved it. It was a great way to, you know, spend my Saturday afternoon.
hey, we start talking about topics people should be talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. And I hope folks listening at home are able to capture a few things to think about. As the purpose for the show is always encouraging people to find ways to continue to cultivate that love, continue to cultivate that positivity. Take what you've listened today from Ellie, founder of Framing Femininity, and bring it back and rebuild that in the capacity that you can. All right, y'all. If anything, reach out to me or Ellie, and we can talk to you more about it. Much love. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Make it happen. Peace.
Beautiful.